So welcome and thanks for joining us this morning. Happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day for tomorrow. We're just going to get started, so we'll just let everyone dial in. We do have a lot of people registered for today, so yeah, we're very excited to have you join us. I can see people are chatting already, saying Happy GAAD. So it is a celebration. So yeah, really pleased to have you join us. Beau's waving. I don't know if you can all see Beau at the moment, but yeah, Beau's saying hello too. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Sam, so welcome. And I will give people a couple of minutes to dial in, just doing a time check. I might give everyone maybe 30 more seconds and we'll just get started. We've got some really exciting content today, some fantastic speakers. So yeah, we're really excited to have you join us today. As people are dialing in, if you would like to use live captioning, you can use the closed caption or the CC button in the Zoom system. We do have AI Media with us today and they are providing live captions. So please do use that feature if that's of interest to you. But yes, warm welcome from myself and the digital accessibility practice. So I'll give it a couple more seconds. Feel free to use the chat to say hello to each other, to welcome each other, and feel free to share what you're doing for Global Accessibility Awareness Day as well. So obviously that's tomorrow. So if you are doing something as a team or within your organisation or government agency, please feel free to share that. We'd love to just share ideas and cross-fertilise all the amazing things that you're planning. But having said that, I might get started, conscious of time, and more people can join as we go through the session today. So just to reiterate, my name's Sam Dancy, and I'm our Digital Accessibility Practice Lead at TTC Global. We do have AI Media on the call today. So if you do want to use that feature of live captioning, you can use the closed caption or the CC button in the Zoom functionality, and that will enable the live captions for you. Okay. So first of all, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Please feel free to share in the chat function the lands that you're on today. I'm on Gadigal land of the Eora Nation myself, but please do feel free to share that in chat as well. It'd be interesting to see the diverse range of locations we're all in today. And I know we're joined by many of you who may not know who we are. The organisation that our digital accessibility practice is within is called the Testing Consultancy, so TTC. So TTC is an IT consulting firm, and it does specialise in quality assurance. So that testing phase of any IT technical transformation or any IT project. I'm lucky enough to lead our digital accessibility practice with my colleague Beau Vass, who's on the call today and will be presenting shortly. So the sorts of things that we support organisations to do relate to supporting you to embed better ways of working. So embedding how to think about digital accessibility and how to actually incorporate that in your day-to-day work. And we also support organisations to manage accessibility on their behalf. So we fully realise that not everyone has maybe the resources, the time, the capability, the skill, the knowledge to undertake digital accessibility work. And so we do manage accessibility on behalf of organisations. So, we do a lot of work in relation to audits, consulting, supporting with understanding and remediations, coaching. We coach digital accessibility teams, training. So we sort of have a spectrum of services that we offer, and we just want to meet organisations where they're at. So wherever a team is or an individual is, we just want to meet them there and help them understand next steps. We support many sectors, so public, private, not-for-profit sectors, smaller organisations through to typically large, complex organisations. So just working with a variety of teams to help them either start or continue on their digital accessibility journey. And we're also really proud of the fact that we're part of the Valuable 500 directory of consultants. So we support Valuable 500 members on their journeys and work with the Valuable 500 too in collaboration. So that's the introductions. Just a bit of housekeeping. So there is the Q&A function and the chat function in this Zoom feature. So you can, if you have a question for one of our speakers today, you can add that into the Q&A function, and my lovely colleagues are online to keep an eye on those for us. We do have time for questions after each speaker today. But if you would like to engage in conversation, share ideas, make a comment, please use the chat function. We'd all love to hear and learn from you today. So as I mentioned earlier on, it is Global Accessibility Awareness Day, so it is a celebration. The purpose of GAAD is to create conversation. So we are hoping that from today, this will generate conversation in your teams and in your organizations. We want to use this as an opportunity to raise awareness. So the purpose of GAAD is to celebrate, raise awareness, and generate conversation about digital accessibility. So this will be recorded. So please feel free to share this with any of your colleagues or friends post the session as well. So I am giving you a call to action. What are you going to take back to your team from today? If there's a conversation you can have at a team meeting or something that you can chat to a colleague whilst you're waiting for the kettle to boil, just taking that back and having a think about how you'll incorporate that into conversation. So in terms of continuing that theme of raising awareness, if you're interested, you may want to follow us on LinkedIn. We raise awareness continuously. So we post every week throughout the week. So various blogs, articles, pieces of information, hints and tips, exciting things that we're doing. So if you are interested and you want to continue learning, you can follow our LinkedIn page. We do have, obviously we have a website, but on that website, we do have specific information around our public training. So we have sessions that we run throughout the year. So for individuals who want to dial in and do some more learning, but maybe it's not possible as a whole team, or to just run internal training for your team or division. So if there are individuals on the call that are interested in public training, we are running that in June and July. And in June, our next session is going to be a web content accessibility deep dive. So if that is something that you're interested in, we'll be running that in June. And then we do also have our free monthly newsletter. So we share all sorts of articles and information about what's happening around the world in relation to digital accessibility in Australia, New Zealand, and then also a bit more about what we're doing and some of the organisation stories around their progress and the clients that we support. So there's a bit of information about us. But moving on to our agenda today. So we will hear from my colleague, Beau. So Beau Vass is our technical lead at TTC Global in our digital accessibility practice. So he is going to be sharing a bit more about a false sense of accessibility and what automation testing tools are missing. And then we will hear from John Paul Cruz, who is also a digital accessibility specialist. Has got an incredible career and study and work history, but we're going to learn a bit more from John around the impact for users of assistive technology when we do or don't factor in accessibility, and a little bit more about some of the work that he does. And then we have time for Q&A at the end as well. So what I will do is I'm going to introduce Beau, and then I'll stop sharing my screen, Beau, so you can use your slides. But Beau is our technical lead of our digital accessibility practice. He was formerly the lead auditing and testing consultant for Vision Australia's digital access team. In another life, Beau was a senior front-end developer, so with over 13 years of development experience within web development agencies across Melbourne, which brings a unique understanding and insight on the challenges of digital accessibility and development. So as I mentioned before, Beau is going to present on a false sense of accessibility and what automation testing tools are missing. And at the end of his session, we will pause for questions. So feel free to add those into the chat function as we go. And Beau, I'll hand to you.
Okay, thanks, Sam. I'll just share my slides. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming and joining us today. Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about automated testing tools for accessibility. So we're talking today about progressing the accessibility journey, and so often the first step that a lot of individuals or organizations will take is to have a look at automated testing tools. And it can be a great place to start to get an idea of some of the types of issues that are present maybe on your website or your app, to give you an indication of what we're looking at for accessibility. But it's also important to keep in mind the limitations of these tools, so you understand not just what they are finding, but also the breadth of issues that they are not finding as well. So there are different types of accessibility testing tools. So we'll have a bit of a look at some of the different types, and then I'll go into some examples of some of the issues that they do and don't find. They're going to focus on issues related to images, just for the sake of time, because we'd probably be here all day if I went through all the different types of issues that are possible in accessibility. So all of the automated testing tools, they work in different ways, but they all ultimately test the same way. So that they all have the same limitations in what they can find and not find. There will be little differences between each one, but they're very marginal. And so when you hear of an automated testing tool claiming to find a lot more issues or a greater percentage of issues than other tools, that's usually just a difference in the way that they are measuring that number. And usually measurements are quite vague as well. There isn't really a direct measure of how many issues you can find with an automated tool, because we don't even know how many specific issues are out there. There's hundreds and hundreds of different types of issues you can find for accessibility on any given website, because every website is different. So let's just quickly go through the different types of automated tools that there are. So firstly, we've got browser-based tools, and they're probably the ones that most of you would be more familiar with. So we've got tools like Wave, we've got Axe DevTools and Google Lighthouse built into Chrome DevTools. And so usually these tools will point out a number of issues once they do a scan. In Google Lighthouse's case, it gives you a score out of 100, which is kind of an odd approach to take when we know how limited that the tool's scope of testing is. So it can give you a bit of a false sense of security or false sense of accessibility, as I've been saying, especially when it comes out with, in this image, it's got a score out of 100. It's given us 100 for our accessibility microsite in a color that I describe as success green. So it's a bit of a misleading number, given that there are so many accessibility issues that the automated tools can't find. So if you don't know the limitations, that might actually make you feel like the accessibility of your website is a lot better than it actually is. And actually, Lighthouse goes on to mention underneath the score a number of different things that you should check manually to supplement the automated testing. So it's an interesting thing to consider when these tools give a score. Otherwise, they usually point out the number of issues, and then they can give a bit more detail about what those issues are. And so all the tools work similar to that. Browser-based tools tend to test one page at a time, so they can be good for a quick test of a particular page at a time. Another type of tool is a crawler. So that can test multiple pages at a time. So you can give it a URL and it can potentially crawl through and test the different links on the page and the different pages on off that page, the different links and pages. And so it can potentially test an entire website. And this gives the ability to test potentially thousands of pages at a time, which can be useful. And also you can usually store that information, so store the results, and you can use that as a kind of baseline and kind of track progress, which can be a power of crawlers. And so this example is of UsableNet's Aqua tool. Again, gives similar results, just in a whole different way. And the other advantage can be that you can test user journeys themselves and not even the entirety of a page. If you need to focus on a particular journey itself, you might have just updated a component and you want to focus on that component, so it can do that. Another form of automated tool is a code linter. So that will work a bit like a spell checker would. but for a coding environment. So a developer, as they're coding, can get instant feedback on something they're doing. So in this case, on the screenshot, there is a link, so an A element, and it's highlighted with a red squiggle, kind of like spell check. And then there's an error message saying that there's a tab index attribute used with a number greater than 0, which is an accessibility fail. So it's pointing that out as the developer is typing, so that can be quite useful. And other tools are integrated tools. So they're kind of embedded into a website and can usually are consistently running. So you've got that feedback kind of always available. Things like SiteImprove or Monsido can work in this way. And so at times they will be giving a score as well, similar to Google Lighthouse, with the same limitations of that score, but also being able to provide a list of issues that can then be investigated and potentially fixed. So again, I'll reiterate, all these tools, they work differently, but the way they test is very much similar, and only minute degrees of difference between what they can and can't find in terms of accessibility issues. So there's a number that's kind of widely stated in around automated testing tools. It's usually in terms of coverage that it will find about 20 to 30% of issues. This has been a number that's been thrown around for years and years. And it goes back to some kind of testing that happened a long time ago. And it's just a number that I think that we've stuck with because it actually is kind of hard to measure, as I mentioned earlier. So it's hard to give a number on it. So it's kind of something that everyone goes along with, like, yeah, okay, it's probably about 20 to 30%. Certainly wouldn't be more than that, but it's fair enough to say it might be around that mark. But what's not as widely stated, because that number gets thrown around, we don't usually talk about what exactly that means. So what are the issues that are found in that 20 to 30%? And so what are the rest of the issues that aren't being found, the 70 to 80% that aren't being found? What does that look like? So that's what we're going to look at in more detail. So as I mentioned, we'll go through some examples of image accessibility. Excuse me. So for the sake of our examples, we're going to just use this one image as an example. And so to describe this image, it's two laptop computers that are on a surface, presumably a table, a light-colored table. And so the laptops are back-to-back, facing the opposite long edges of the table. One has two hands using the keyboard, and the other one has one hand using the trackpad. There's some books and papers and stationery and a few small gadgets lying around on the table as well. And we're going to use this in examples of both as an informative image and a decorative image. So an informative image is an image providing information to the user that isn't otherwise available in the page. And a decorative image is an image that is not providing any additional information to the user. So our first example is an image element has no alt attribute. So this is a very easy one for an automated tool to find. So we've got a nice green tick there, success green for this one. So we've got a code sample here of an image element in HTML, which is the IMG element, source equals laptops.jpg. And there's nothing else in that element. So an automated tool can easily find the image element in the code, see that there's no alt attribute attached, and it knows that that's a problem. So that will be found by an automated tool. However, if we add the alt attribute and we look at an example of an informative image, if this is informative and so it needs a description, in our code sample now, we've got the alt attribute added, which is good. So the automated tool will pass that part of things, but the alt attribute is empty. So this is normally how we mark up a decorative image. It has to have an alt attribute. So all image elements should have an alt attribute, but it should be empty for a decorative image. However, this is an informative image in this instance, and it's empty, but the automated tool has no way to know that this should be decorative or informative. So it can't pick up that this is actually an issue. This image should have been described. Now, if we flip this around and say, okay, how about in the context of a decorative image? So now we've got a decorative image, but in our code sample, we've now got the alt attribute that has a description in it. And the description is generic laptops image for decoration, which is probably a bit of a clue that this was supposed to be a decorative image. but it's got a description. So this is an accessibility failure. But again, the automated tool has no way to determine whether this should be decorative or informative. So automated tool can't pick this one up. In this example, now we've got an informative image that's described. Okay, so we're getting in the right direction here. So we've got alt text, it's an informative image. So we're on the right track. Let's read the alternative text for this laptop's image, I'll remind you. And the alt text is that a blueberry cheesecake in the middle of a black table. So it probably couldn't be more wrong because we've got an image of a laptop, of laptops. So not at all cheesecake. Sorry for making everyone a little bit hungry as we get closer to lunchtime with this example. But so the automated tool has no way to know whether the alt text itself is accurate or not. So again, this is another issue that the automated testing can't find. So far it's not doing super well. Let's move on now to a different type of image. So we've looked at the image element. Now we're going to look at an image included via CSS. And so that means that it's coming through the style sheet, not through the HTML. So in the code sample for this one, we're using the same image as an example with the laptop. So we've got a div element, and then we've got class equals my image, and that's all we've got in the code sample. So a div is a non-semantic element in HTML. It has no meaning to computers, to machines, or to people for that matter, actually. And so an image can be included through the CSS using that class we've added. And that can be included as a background image or a font icon or an image sprite if you are old enough to know what that is. That's a very old technique we used to use back in the day as developers. Actually, I saw one recently out in the wild. So they do still exist. Actually, I found some of my own code out in the wild from like 13 years ago, which was quite interesting. I think it still holds up relatively well, and it was not the one with the image sprite, but still, code can exist for a very long time on the internet. So all these techniques can still exist. Anyway, back to the point. So in this instance, an automated tool has no idea that this div, regardless of the class it's using, regardless of the fact that, let's say, it's using a background image in the CSS, the automated tool has no way to know that this is supposed to be either an image or an informative image for that matter. So it doesn't even know that there's an image there. And if it did, it wouldn't know if it should be described or not. So this is another issue that automated tools can't find. Now, what we can do with non-semantic elements is add semantics in using ARIA roles. So in this example, we've got the div again, but we've added role equals image, IMG. So this tells third-party machines like screen readers and like automated tools that this element is supposed to be an image. So now that the machine knows that it's supposed to be an image, it is checking for whether there is alt text that it is aware of. And because there's nothing else on this element, in this case, when you use role equals image, you need to add the ARIA label attribute. You don't use the alt attribute. That is only for image elements. So in this case, there's no ARIA label. So again, the automated tool can pick up that this is supposed to be an image. It can see whether there's an ARIA label. And if it's not there, it can flag this as an issue. So automated tools are making a bit of a comeback now. They've got this one. Let's see if it can keep up the momentum. No, no, it can't keep up the momentum in this instance. So we've added the ARIA label now to our example. We've got ARIA label equals mud cake with mint frosting. Again, we're going with the cake theme here. Apologies for that coming into lunchtime. Hopefully you've got some morning tea that is as delicious as this sounds. But yeah, so we've got mud cake with mint frosting, but our image is actually the laptop's image still on the table. So again, the same issue applies, that the automated tool can pick up that it's an image, it can pick up that there's an ARIA label element, but it doesn't understand the context of the actual description and whether that is accurate or not. It's just not looking for that. So it can't find this problem. And it's a pretty substantial one as well. So we're going to look at a different type of example now. We've got some content on a page. We've got a section of content that has a heading, a bit of text, and a link. So it's kind of like a card type component, you could say. So we've got the heading, creating a more inclusive world for all. We've got the paragraph text, which we're highlighting because that's what we're going to focus on, which says, we support you to embed accessibility into the way that you work and manage accessibility on your behalf. And then there's a link that says learn how, which is its own accessibility issue that an automated tool can't find. That's not descriptive enough, but we're not going to talk about that today. So if we look at the code sample we have here, we've got a paragraph tag for that paragraph text, which is a P tag in HTML. But we've got the role equals image ARIA role added, like we talked about in the previous examples. But in this case, this is paragraph text. So this is a mistake made by the developer. Wasn't me, by the way. And actually, this isn't real, so it's actually nobody. But anyway, so we've got role equals image on a paragraph text. Okay, so that's a pretty obvious problem for anyone looking at it. But the automated tool doesn't pick this up. It doesn't know that this is the wrong role that's been applied because it doesn't know what the content actually is. So while it doesn't pick up this issue, actually it does pick up a issue for this. And if anyone wants to post in the chat which issue they think it might pick up, post in the chat now. I won't be looking at the chat, but I'm sure that your fellow chat members will give you brownie points if you can pick up what this would be. So if you said that it's an image without alt text, you are correct. The automated tool will pick up that this is an image without alt text, and its recommendation will be to add alt text. Well, this is a problem. So we'll look at what the recommendation is for Axe DevTools. And this is the same or similar for most automated tools. So I'm not picking on Axe, I'm just using it as one example. And one of the other problems you get with automated tools is that the advice is usually quite generic and can be kind of difficult to understand because it's not taking into account the context of your issue. It's giving a broad general recommendation. And so in this instance, it's saying to solve the problem, you need to fix at least one of the following. ARIA label attribute does not exist or is empty. ARIA labeled by attribute does not exist, references elements that do not exist, or references elements that are empty, or element has no title attribute. So post in the chat if you feel like that does or doesn't make sense. But let's say it does make sense and we follow its advice. So it's saying we need to add alt text. So we need to add an ARIA label attribute, obviously. So let's add that in. So we're adding in to our paragraph text, ARIA label, and then we're giving it a description. So what is this content? I guess what we do kind of sounds like it's kind of a label for this particular piece of content. So we've got role equals image on this paragraph, and an ARIA label equals what we do, and the paragraph text, we support you to embed accessibility into the way that you work, etc. The problem with this is that now that the screen reader believes, and sorry, this would pass. So this would pass the automated tool because it's a role equals image and it has an ARIA label. So as far as the tool goes, well done, 100% Google Lighthouse success green on this one. But when the screen reader interacts with the paragraph text here, it's going to announce something similar to graphic and then what we do. It's going to announce the ARIA label, but it's not going to announce the paragraph text. That paragraph text is completely excluded from screen readers. They don't think that that needs to be announced. So it's completely changing the content. And this is something that, this could be an issue that we built into this content ourselves and the automated tool wouldn't pick it up. But in this instance, the automated tool recommended that we do this based on a mistake we made earlier. So it's very important to understand that if you put the wrong role on an element, the automated tool will, in most cases, believe that that's what the element should be. It has no ability to correct you when you've applied the wrong role to a non-semantic element. So that's worth keeping in mind. And just another example of a complex image. So complex images work in a different way to other images in that when you do alt text for a complex image, you don't want to put all the text description because there's a lot in the alt text description. You want to have it somewhere else on the page and you refer to that description through the alt text. So the image itself we're showing now has a heading of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then there's a bit of text content, and it's showing the Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid, which has 5 levels, and the bottom base of the pyramid is physiological, And then above that is safety, and on top of that is social, and on top of that is self-esteem, and on top of that is self-actualization. And each one of these sections has a bit of paragraph text next to it. Absolutely should not be in an image anyway, but for example's sake, we're talking about the complex image example. And so in the code sample, we've got the image element again, we've got source equals Maslow's.png, and then we've got the alt attribute with the content Maslow's hierarchy of needs, detailed description follows image. That's where we've labeled, we've given the summary in the alt text of what that image is or a title, and then we've explained in the alt text where to find the long or detailed description. So that is correct, but the automated tool has no ability to know whether that long description is in the page. And if it is in the page, it has no ability to know if it's in the right place. And if it is in the right place, it has no ability to know whether it's accurate. So it can't do any of that. And a couple of bonus issues just on this, with this example, that color contrast within an image, whether that meets minimum requirements, automated tool can't check for that. And whether there's whether there's text in the image, automated tool cannot determine that. But wait, there's more. So when we're thinking about things other than images, just to give a little taste, this is not an exhaustive list of the other issues, non-image related, but these are all quite significant issues for a user. And for the most part, well, all of them can't be fully tested automatically. And most of them can't be tested at all in most circumstances by an automated tool. So just to go through the list, captions and transcripts for videos. So whether they are there or whether they are accurate, form error validation, multiple different types of issues with that can't be picked up by automated tools. Keyboard functionality, whether the right things are interactive via a keyboard, whether focus and focus order is correct, can't pick that up, or at least cannot fully pick that up. Focus management and navigation within dynamic apps. And most of the web is made as dynamic apps these days, and focus management is very important. But an automated tool has no idea whether a user, a screen reader user, or even a keyboard user is being moved to the right place that they're supposed to be within a dynamic application. Custom components and their status, things like tabs and accordions. If you don't apply, because they're not native HTML components, so generally they're probably created with divs or other types of non-semantic elements. If you don't apply the correct ARIA role to those, the automated tool has no idea that that's supposed to be tabs or that's supposed to be accordions. And so all the things you need to do to make them accessible, the automated tool isn't going to tell you anything unless you've applied the right role to that element. Status updates and notifications. If you're told, maybe you saved your details and a little notification comes up to say it's saved. Automated tool can't pick up if that message stays on screen long enough, and can't pick up whether a screen reader has been informed of this happening. Accurate headings, links, and labels. So whether the actual content of the headings, links, and labels is correct. Automated tool doesn't know what that heading is for. It doesn't know what the link does. It doesn't know what the button does. So it can't know what the right label should be. So none of that is picked up. Heading structure in context. So there are some heading related things that automated tools can pick up, but they can't understand the content. So if you have marked up the wrong headings with the wrong levels, but they happen to be in the right order in a code, from a code point of view, the automated tool can't pick it up. So again, it's like a false sense of accessibility there, that you think that you've done your headings correct, but actually they could be wrong. Browser zoom, responsiveness, and user settings. Can't pick up whether a user is using a different platform and whether there are things that are missing from that platform. So if you look if you zoom and get the mobile style sheet and there is content missing, the automated tool doesn't say, hey, there's content missing on this mobile view that is usually on the desktop version. So that's an accessibility problem, but the automated tool doesn't know that. It also doesn't understand when a user is using their own settings to adjust maybe the text on the screen to make sure that it's responsive enough to not lose content. Doesn't know any of that. And whether content should or should not be visible or hidden at different times, which when you do accessibility and you focus on screen reader accessibility, there's a lot of instances where things need to be hidden or visible at different times. An automated tool has no idea how to do that. These are all quite significant issues for accessibility, and none of which an automated tool is capturing. So again, a reminder, if 20 to 30% of issues can be found, then 70 to 80% of issues will not be found, and focusing on the idea of the issues that can't be found, because we often think 20 to 30%, that sounds pretty good. We're not thinking, well, does 70 to 80% missing sound good? Probably not so much. And going through everything I've gone through so far, some of you might be like me and thinking, this doesn't sound, actually 20 to 30% sounds a bit generous. So I actually think that, I feel like that number's kind of based on a true story. And from the past, when maybe it was more accurate to say 20 to 30%, but now as modern web development has become more complex and you have these dynamic applications, I think there's a lot less that automated tools can find. And I went through every WCAG success criterion to see if there were, which ones could be fully tested by an automated tool. And I actually couldn't find one of the 55 success criterion under level AA for WCAG 2.2 that could be fully tested automatically, even though there were some I assumed you would be able to. Once I actually thought about it and tested it out a little bit, at least for the tool that I tried one tool. So the point is that there's not a great deal of coverage. So I think looking at it more around 10 to 15% would be a more accurate number to go by. So when you think about where automated tools fit into your accessibility mix, consider that aspect, that maybe it's only 10 to 15%. So what else should you be doing? And so remember to flip that number around again and think, if it's 10 to 15%, then that's potentially 85 to 90% of accessibility issues that are being missed. And I think it changes the way we think about how we use automated tools. And it should do that. There are some organizations out there that are solely focusing on automated tools. And this can be the problem, that they don't have that understanding of what a big gap they're leaving there is when they only focus on tools. So the key takeaways are not to think that automated tools don't have a place, because they do, but it's important to know what their limitations are and how they fit in, because it barely scratches the surface of full accessibility. But if you know that, then you can mitigate those issues and make sure that you're filling the gaps. So an automated testing tool alone, even if you get a perfect score with beautiful success green with 100 out of 100, it doesn't mean your content's accessible. It means that maybe you've reached a decent amount for that 10 to 15% of issues. But if that's all you're relying on for your accessibility, your strategy, then it's likely to result in a highly inaccessible experience for users. So just as I finish up quickly, what you can do to mitigate those gaps, build up your knowledge and skills, to keep learning about accessibility. So again, don't rely on an automated tool. Don't rely on anything apart from building your knowledge up slowly, and make incremental improvements to your work. You don't have to meet WCAG or go beyond WCAG tomorrow, but keep building on your skills. So eventually you're working towards that and you're getting better and better as you go. And this way it doesn't impact, maybe if time is an issue, or you need to learn these things every time you do a project, make sure you just learn a bit at a time and make that part of your regular process, so it doesn't take time on your next project, and then build on that next time. Learn manual testing techniques to complement the tools. So the different things you can do to test certain things that can be quite easy and quick, like learn what you need to know for using a keyboard to interact with your website, to make sure that you're picking up on some of those gaps. Learn from experts before you go on your own. So understand the breadth of the issues first before you fully rely on your own knowledge and learning. So get that platform, and then you know where the gaps are and what you have to build on. One of the ways you can do that, a good way to do that, is get an audit of your product, so you can see where it's currently at, and you can compare the results with your automated findings as well. Identify where the gaps are, and then you can learn from the results. So you can learn from those things that the automated tools aren't teaching you, learn from the audit results, learn what you need to do next time to build out the issues before you get to the testing phase. So you're relying less on testing altogether. And once you're technically accessible, and so potentially meeting WCAG, which is a foundational level of accessibility. It's not the gold standard, it's just the foundation. Once you've laid that foundation, then you want to look at doing testing with users, because they're the ones that are going to provide you with the real insights on how to make your website or your app fully accessible and fully usable by people with disabilities as well. So that's the key step in the journey. So with that, that's a lot of rambling from me. So I'll hand back to Sam now. I'm happy to answer any questions if we have time, either now or at the end of the session. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Beau. Yeah, of course. There's been a number of questions in the chat and excellent, as ever, excellent presentation. So thanks, Beau. And I love your success green. I think that's a great phrase. So I might just ask you one or two questions quickly. I might spend 1 or 2 minutes and then I'll go, we'll move over and hear more from John. So Mike did ask a question. I'm just scrolling back. Here we go. So what are your thoughts on providing an equal experience for people using screen readers versus not using? If images are decorative, a blind user won't see it, a sighted user will. Would it still be okay to mark decorative? That's from Mike.
Yes, that's the age-old question. It's a philosophical question more than it's a technical question. So it's definitely something that we all debate over and over. And so there's different, what it's important to understand is that there isn't just one type of screen reader user. Everyone's different. Everyone is an individual. And so whether you use a screen reader or not, you're no less of an individual. So one screen reader could give you feedback, screen reader user could give you feedback on the accessibility of your website or a component, whatever it is. And they could give quite different advice than another user. So it's very hard to determine whether you should be marking something as decorative or not marking it as decorative. And there's definitely debate around that, and that goes around accessibility expert circles as well. So you really need to focus. What you need to, I guess, the balance to take is that you want to allow. So for a sighted user, you can very easily skim past images you don't care about, right? So you have the ability to just skim past it and pretty much ignore it almost automatically. You just scroll down to the content you want. A screen reader user has a bit less ability to do that. They have controls they can use to skip to certain parts of a page so they can avoid certain things, but they also don't know what they're avoiding. I guess in the case of someone who is blind using a screen reader, you can have people who have different levels of vision who use a screen reader as well. But for someone who is blind using a screen reader, they don't know if they are skipping content. So there is a balance there. If a screen reader user is going through line by line through a website, you don't want to bog them down in a whole bunch of decorative images that really provide nothing to the user and no information. But then again, you want to make sure that you are giving the equivalent experience. And that's where the kind of the challenge that you mentioned there, it's very difficult. So it is a balancing act. You don't want to bog screen reader users down, but you also want to make sure you're providing certainly important information, but also that kind of less important but more experience information. If you've got images that are providing a vibe, then it's something to consider. Can you provide a bit of that information and maybe make your text description as succinct as possible, but while also providing that vibe? So it is a balance, and it's something that we're all kind of talking a lot about and debating constantly because it's a really tough one.
Thanks, Beau. There are a number of questions in the chat, but what I might do is I might jump to introduce John. And if you don't mind jumping into the chat to answer a few of them, that would be really helpful. Yep. And we can circle back at the end as needed. Or if you want to raise one of them at the end as needed, that would be really helpful. So thanks, Beau. Great presentation.
Thank you.
But it's my pleasure now to introduce John. So John Paul Cruz is our guest speaker today. So John is a disability policy and digital accessibility specialist with a focus on human rights, accessibility, child rights, digital transformation, health information, and urban development. He's worked on projects assessing the accessibility of regional human rights mechanisms, political participation of Filipinos with disabilities, the implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and the rights of people with disabilities to sustainable urban living. Additionally, he is the country representative for the Philippines in the Smart Cities for All program and has been instrumental in drafting the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan, a regional disability action plan. A former US ASEAN Fulbright and Salzburg Global Seminar Fellow, John holds a master's degree in international affairs, focusing on international and comparative disability policy from American University, Washington, DC, and a bachelor's degree in public administration from the University of the Philippines. John has also been a visiting research fellow at the Berkeley School of Law, and he is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Melbourne, researching the improvement of online health information and accessibility for people who are blind or have low vision. John will share his experience on the significance of digital accessibility for assistive technology users and guide organisations on their digital accessibility and inclusion journey. So, John, I'd like to hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Let me share my slides. Great. So again, good morning, everyone, and thank you both for that very insightful presentation. And happy GAAD Day tomorrow. A few things that I wanted to check to also emphasize based on your presentation are the key takeaways that I have based on what you have shared to everyone. Number one, automated accessibility testing tools have some advantages. And some of the advantages that I see that you mentioned are number one, it can be very efficient in the sense that it can test one or multiple or even a whole website at once. And that can be very good for many organizations who are starting in their digital accessibility journey. Second, digital accessibility tools, automated accessibility tools can be very consistent because they are using if you're using the same set of tools, they will be able to test same set of RECAG requirements all the time. Third, automated tools can be very cost effective. You can start with a very simple and free tool, which is or a plugin or a browser or a desktop app for free. And that could be very helpful for many organizations who are just starting to figure out what are the accessibility issues that they have within their websites. And lastly, because automated accessibility tools are able to test multiple web pages at once, that can be very more streamlined and helpful in saving a lot of time for you. Instead of doing a manual testing, for example, for probably days or even weeks or months, it can take you a few minutes in order for you to just test and get a breath of what are the accessibility issues that you have within your websites. Another thing that I observe based on your presentation is that automated accessibility tools have some disadvantages, which you've shared with your presentation. Number one, automated accessibility tools will have difficulty in covering all the accessibility requirements or features that WCAG is asking for people to check whenever they're creating their own websites. Second, automated accessibility tools may not have clear or context of what accessibility features are present. If, for example, you have an alternative text that's available in a website or an image on a website, it's possible that it will not be able to capture if it's clear, if the description is clear, or if the alternative text provides enough context. And finally, one of the disadvantages of automated accessibility tools is that it leaves out the depth that you can get from the users themselves when they're using their assistive technologies. I myself have been using assistive technology for more than 15 years, and I've used screen reader for both for Mac device and a Windows device. For Windows, I use NVDA, and for Mac, I use the VoiceOver. And for some people who are new to accessibility, their accessibility journey, screen readers are technologies that allow people who cannot see what's on the screen properly. It helps them to convert the text to a voice or audio description. And usually you use keyboard in order for you to navigate your website with the screen reader. At times, because I also use screen magnifier in my case, there are times that I usually use a cursor of a mouse in order for me to navigate my website. And some of the issues that Beau mentioned are the things that automated tools will not be able to capture. For example, it will not be able, automated tools will see if there is a present or absence of alternative text, but it will not be able to give you result and tell you if the alternative text is meaningful to a user. Second, it's possible that alternative automated tools will be able to figure out if there are headings available or present, but the logical reading order may change based on the code and or based on maybe the CSS of a website. Screen readers might have some difficulty in figuring out the logical order if it's not properly determined. And only if you're a user will you be able to figure out if the logical order is present within a website. Another example would be the hidden content. Sometimes you would find drop-down menus within a website. And in my experience, when I use screen reader, sometimes the screen reader can read out loud every element that's within the hidden element. If it's not properly coded, probably your automated tool will say it is able to detect that. But only if you're using a screen reader will you be able to know if the code was properly executed. Another example would be complex language. Automated tools will not be able to know if the language that's used is plain, simple for people to understand, or if it's using jargon. Also, automated tools will not be able to provide you results if your instructions are clear enough for a user to understand. If, for example, you have an instruction on fill up this form and tell you, automated tool will not be able to tell you if it gave the user enough instruction for them to fill up a form, for example. Automated tools will also not be able to capture if the caption, transcript, or audio description are accurate enough and they're in sync with the video that you're watching. And finally, automated tools will be able to find if, for example, you have CAPTCHA available and it should be changed, but it will not be able to tell you if there's an alternative CAPTCHA available for users with, let's say, screen readers. Now, what can you do if you are starting within your journey? Are you going to use automated tools, manual testing, or expert user, or get advice from users themselves? There are a few, I'll share with you probably a framework that you can use when you're trying to figure out when you're using automated tools or if you're going to use automated tools. If you're starting with your digital accessibility journey, one thing that you have to first emphasize and look for is there a common cause in terms of or vision for an organization? This means that you have to understand that to start with accessibility, everybody should have a buy-in in terms of accessibility. If you want to embed accessibility within your organization, or you want to embed accessibility in your website, you have to get support from everybody. And usually it starts with the leadership. If your leaders are keen on embedding accessibility, then you would be able to start your journey with an digital accessibility. Second, you also have to understand that there should be the context. You have to understand the context within which you are operating. If you're an organization where you have a policy that allows you to embed accessibility within the organization, then that would be a good start. And it's usually very important because, for example, in the 1990s, when FCC started to require televisions to have closed caption, exporters to the US, for example, were required to also include that closed caption in the products that they provide. So the context, the policy, do you also have support from people with disabilities, or do you have advocacy groups that are promoting accessibility. Those are very important when you're starting with your digital accessibility journey. And finally, the capability of organizations is very important. Do you have the budget that or the resources in order for you to start your digital accessibility journey? Do you have, for example, developers or designers who have the right skills for them to execute whatever your organization is requiring in terms of accessibility? You also have to look at your ability as an organization to coordinate all the different efforts that you have within the organization. So in sum, for you to start with your digital accessibility journey, you can start with automated tools, automated accessibility testing, for you to get a sense of the breadth of the accessibility issues that your website has or your organization has to address. But you also have to have a roadmap of where you are in your journey. And often you can reach out to organizations like TTC, which can provide you a digital maturity assessment of your organization, knowing what's the level of support that you have within your governance or your leadership, what's the level of support that you have in terms of budget, what's the level of support that you have in terms of people with diverse skills within your organization have in terms of supporting that accessibility efforts. And in general, most of these efforts will start somewhere. And I guess the best time for you to start your accessibility journey is now. So again, thank you, and I look forward to receiving any comments or questions that you may have.
Thank you, John. That was really insightful, and thank you for sharing your insights and knowledge. And the time is now, I think, is a great way to finish. Absolutely right. There's, you have to start somewhere if you're at the beginning of your journey, and the time is now. And thank you for sharing about resources. It's a conversation we have time and time again with our clients and with other organizations. The resourcing constraints that we all work within, and the ability to be able to have the right skill, capability, budget, time, people to undertake digital accessibility. So thank you. And yes, in relation to road mapping and digital accessibility maturity assessments, we do have a maturity model that we can talk to our clients about and support you with. So if that is something that's of interest, we'd be happy to chat about road mapping further. Do we have any questions? I have a question, but I'm conscious of time, so I might just check the chat first of all for you. And if there are any questions for John, please add them into the Q&A or the chat function. John, I was going to ask you in relation to maybe more broadly, because you've got such an incredible breadth of experience in the access and inclusion space. So your broader work has been instrumental in mainstreaming disability rights in the Philippines and Southeast Asia. Are there any broader insights about access and inclusion you can share from your work? Obviously, you focused on disability policy, regional action plans. You've had a focus on voting, how communication and access to platforms has fitted into, the usability and accessibility of voting. But yeah, is there anything more broadly that you'd like to share?
Right. My experience with developing the disability action plan in the region has been a very interesting journey. Number one thing that for some people who are not familiar with ASEAN, it's Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and it's composed of 10 countries. And now we have another one that's applying for membership, Timor-Leste. And because we have 10 countries, all of these countries have different levels of resources. They have different levels of understanding and a common vision, a vision of what accessibility is. And how they define also disability is also diverse. And like in any organization, one thing that's very important as a starting point is always having a common vision on what you want to achieve in the future. If you want to include accessibility, it has to be a common understanding among different members of the organization. let me, for example, give you IBM. When they started in 1988 and introduced screen reader, one of their vision was to make sure that computers, PCs, are available not only for people who are sighted, but also for people who are blind. And that's a common vision that has impacted and driven them for moving towards accessibility. Apple's another example where you have um, built-in accessibility features, screen readers built in when you buy it, when you buy the products of Apple. And that's because I remember Steve Wozniak a few years ago mentioned that same thing with IBM. They had a vision that every person in the planet should have access to computer and the internet. And one way, and they've included people with disabilities within their vision. So start there. You ask any organization, whether it's a member state or a country or a regional bloc or a small organization, start with asking yourselves, what do you want? What's a common culture that you want to include? And usually you have to include it, the accessibility. If you want to include accessibility, you have to include it as one of your KPIs, key performance indicator. If all of the members of your organization are aware that accessibility should be embedded in their work, regardless of what they're doing within the organization, then that culture of accessibility or digital accessibility will be embedded. And I guess that would work for any type of organization.
Thank you, John. I'm conscious of time. We're 1 minute past 12, so I appreciate that people might need to dial off, but we'll just do some wrapping up here. Any final words from Beau or John? So either of you, is there anything that you'd like to close on today? And I'll see if I can reshare my screen very quickly. But yeah, either Beau or John, is there any closing comments or anything else you'd like to add?
I think I've rambled on enough. So I'll just make the point that the world has changed a lot over the last 20 to 30 years with digital. It's become a lot more online based. Essential services are often only online. It's quite difficult to find offline ways to access those I can't think of the word now, but those initiatives or those services is the word I was looking for. So I think that while, 30 years ago, the internet was just this add-on, you could use it if you want for some convenience, but you still can do everything in person or over the phone. These days, a lot of things are the only option is online. It's essential that we make sure that the online world is accessible, because a lot of people have no way to do certain things that they need to do, important things for their lives, not to mention the independence that they can have through using online services and online platforms. It's essential that we all make sure we know it's our responsibility to make the internet accessible. Those of us who are working in digital in any role or any capacity, we do have a responsibility to make sure that everything is accessible.
Thanks, Beau. John, any final closing words?
Right. Technology has immensely improved over the past few years. If they can have in 1980s, in 1970s, the assistive technologies that we have right now, I think there's no reason for us not to start creating more accessible and making our products more accessible to everyone, and embedding digital accessibility in all the services that we have.
Thanks, John. Brilliant. Thank you so much to you, John, as our guest speaker today. Really appreciate you sharing your insights and your wealth of experience. And to Beau, an amazing presentation, very, very thought-provoking. I'd like to thank everyone for dialing in. Sorry, we ran a few minutes over. I think we could talk for hours and hours about this. So thank you for staying with the webinar and as we ran over time. So thank you for that. If anyone does want to reach out to us, if you have any questions, my email address, samantha.dancy@ttcglobal.com. We've shared links for our website if you want to have a quick look and reach out through there. If we haven't answered any of your questions, when we send out the recording, we'll also answer some of those questions that maybe we haven't gotten to. Hopefully the team has in the chat today, but appreciate all of your participation. So thanks very much. And yeah, have an enjoyable GAAD tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.